So there's another section at issue in these debates, Section 702. Uh, Harley, Nima, do you want to briefly tell us what that's about and what might happen on that this year?
Sure. Section 702, like Section 215, has been one of those sections that have been given a lot of people heartburn. Section 702 was really designed to target people abroad. And so it allowed the government to do targeted collection where one of the parties was abroad. It was never intended to be a tool of domestic surveillance. But what's come out over the last couple of years is that a lot of what's collected under 702 are the communications of U.S. persons. And once the government collects this bucket of communications, which are some foreign, some involving people within the United States, they can go ahead and search through those communications with looking for information about you or me. And a lot of people, including myself, find that very problematic. It's basically an end around the Fourth Amendment. Under normal circumstances, if you wanted to collect information about you or I, you would go to a court and you would get a warrant for it. And instead, simply because the government sort of, they call it incidentally collected my information when they were looking at a person abroad, they then can keep and retain that information and search through it. This is a part of, this is a section and an authority that wasn't really touched by the USA Freedom Act. There were efforts, at the very least, to close, the searching of that information for U.S. person identifiers, this so-called backdoor search loophole. It wasn't included in the base bill, but we saw during the House Appropriations process an attempt by members to get provisions into their appropriations bill that would have outlawed this type of searching.
So this is a program, you didn't hear anything about how all the independent reviews found this to be an ineffective program, because they all found that it was enormously important to our ability to catch terrorists and gather foreign intelligence. It is enormously important. It required a special statute precisely because while it is targeted at foreigners, it's targeted at communications that touch the United States in some way. Maybe they just pass through the United States, or maybe they're communications to people in the United States. But if they're communicating, if terrorists are communicating with people in the United States, at least half of the communications are Americans because they're in the United States. So everybody knew when they voted for this law that there were going to be lots of communications that involved Americans in this process, and the means to prevent that from becoming a domestic surveillance tool was to say you need to be focused on targeting the foreigner, not the American. You can't use your ability to identify Americans who are calling a terrorist as a way of spying on the American.
Is that enough, Harley?
So a couple of points to remember about Section 702. One, it allows for not just targeting of an individual. You can get information about a large number of individuals. Two, there's very little judicial oversight of of these programs, because what happens under the law is that the government goes to the FISA court and they simply certify that this information is needed. There's no court order, there's no warrant, nothing like that. So they do that, they go to the FISA court, they say we certify it, the FISA court is required, if the certification is correct, to give them the order. They take the order, they get information on a large number of people, including Americans, and then they are allowed to look through this information, find if there's information related to a crime, not even the terrorism investigation that supposedly spurred the order in the first place, but any crime, and then they can pass it on to law enforcement. And the agency doing this is a secretive military intelligence agency. That is troubling. And so the reform that has been called for is that when the information has been collected, they should at least get some sort of court order, some sort of judicial process before they search that information for Americans. We think that that is a reasonable restriction.